Welcome once again to my class. Today we're going to look at fungi. Your normal yeast used for baking, the mushrooms you see on woods, trees, and probably molds you find on bread or on when food gets spoiled, or those green structures, black structures are basically fungi. All of them have a true nucleus, which means that they are eukaryotic, and you can find fungi in different forms: unicellular, filamentous, microscopic, and all of that. And they have filaments called hyphae. Then, of course, you should also know that the cell wall of the fungi is made up of chitin and glucans, and fungi can produce both sexually and asexually. So we're going to be looking at the different classification of fungi, their forms, their modes of reproduction. Then another important characteristic of fungi is that they are achlorophylous, which means that they do not have chlorophyll like plants, and they are not autotrophic. They are basically heterotrophic. They can be chemoheterotrophic, and some of them are saprophytic. They are basically your decomposers with your Monera, that is the bacteria. All right, so next is the fungal habitat and the growth. They are cosmopolitan, that means you can find them all over the world, and some of them can occur in fresh water or in marine water. And we have different species of fungi. Some can be parasitic, some of them are saprophytic, and we have different forms, as I've mentioned earlier, unicellular, and the mycelia forms can form divided regions. So we call those ones septates. But if their regions are not divided, they are called as septates. And some of them can also be dimorphic. So for forms, we have unicellular, mycelia, and dimorphic. Dimorphic being that they are capable of changing between their unicellular and mycelia forms. So one is unicellular, the other is mycelia, and the dimorphic means they can actually interchange between these two forms. And so this is basically your hyphae. Is a thread-like chain of cell, and the hyphae comes together to form the mycelium. Then you should also know that the mushroom itself is a fruiting body. And then the picture also shows a yeast cell, and you can see the nucleus showing that it is eukaryotic. And the next image is showing the dimorphic fungi. As I've earlier said, they can be parasitic fungi. That means they feed on their host cells. Obligate parasites are basically permanent parasites, but facultative parasites are normally saprophytic, but if opportunities arise, then they can become parasitic. And they have a specialized hyphae called the eustoria, which they use to penetrate their host. For the sapotrophic, they are fungi that feed on decaying food or organic matter. They can be obligate, or they can also be facultative, depending on the situation. And so we have symbiotic, meaning that they can form associations with other living organisms to be able to carry out some biological functions. And so we have the mycorrhiza and the lichen. And there are different modes of reproduction in fungi. As you can see on the table, we have the vegetative, the asexual, and the sexual forms. And all the different methods for these different types or modes are well listed on the table. We have different classification of fungi: the zygomycota, the ascomycota, the basidiomycota, and the deuteromycota. So what you want to take note of, you have to know the common names for each of these types. For example, the ascomycota is called the sac fungi. The basidiomycota is called the club fungi. You need to know their examples and at least 3 or 4 key features of these fungi. For example, I can ask you, where can you find the agaricus? Where can you find the mucor? Where can you find the penicillium? Where can you find aspergillus? So you need to know all of these different classification of fungi. Fungi is basically important, but they can also cause some harmful effects to the environment, such as spoilage of food, diseases in plants and humans and in animals, rotting of wood, production of toxins, and even growing in aircraft fuel tanks that can also be destructive and lead to accidents. For the beneficial effect of fungi, they maintain the soil fertility. I talked about the mycorrhizal relationship they form with root noodles, and so they basically help to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere. Plants cannot do this on their own, but with the help of fungi, they can. And so they're also useful in producing enzymes, vitamins, and hormones. They're also used in the production of antibiotic substances, like for the penicillium species. Some fungi are very edible and nutritious. They're also used for academic studies and research. They aid in biological control of soil-borne pathogens and insects, and there are different things that they can do. All right, so we are going to go into the plant kingdom now. And for the plant kingdom, we have different divisions like the bryophytes, the gymnosperms, the pteridophytes, the flowering plant, that is your angiosperms. But the bryophyte is a special type of plant. It's a seedless, non-vascular plant, meaning that it does not produce seeds and it does not have true roots, leaf, and stem. The term biophyte was coined in 1864, and basically it means mosses. And there are about 960 genera and 24,000 species, and they have a worldwide distribution. The science that deals with biophytes is called biology, and these are the general characteristics. So they show alternation of generations. It means they can be gametophytic and sporophytic. We have primitive forms like the liverwort. We also have the advanced forms, which are basically the mosses. Remember that they do not have true root, leaf, or stem, but they have structures that look like them. So we also know that they produce by vegetative and sexual methods. Basically, just know that the bryophytes are non-vascular and at the same time seedless. Of course, they produce both sexually and asexually. In the sexual mode of reproduction, we have the ogamous type, and that means that the female gametes are basically non-motile. They don't have flagellum, but the male gametes are motile and swim towards the female gametes. Basically, they cannot fertilize or reproduce without water. So they need water because the male sex organs called the ateridia, that is the plural form, the singular form is ateridium, is going to produce spermatocytes or enterozoids that will swim towards the female to fertilize them. The female sex organ is called the acogonium, the singular form. The plural form is acagonia, and it's a flax-shaped structure. And so, basically, when the sperm fuses with the female gametes, that is called fertilization. It forms a zygote, and from the zygote, mitosis is going to occur to form the sporophyte. That is the plant that produces the spores, and when male spores are formed, they can give rise to the gametophytes, either the male or the female gametophyte, which will produce the female and the male gametes, and then the whole process continues all over again. Some structures form the protonema that will finally give birth to the gametophytes. So, bryophytes are classified into the liverworts. Their common name is the liverwort, but their scientific name is called the hepaticophyta. The same with the onward, Anterosorophyta, and the mosses, the bryophyta. The liverworts are usually grown in moist, shady habitats such as banks of streams, marshy ground, damp soil, bark of trees, and deep in the wood. One of the species is the Marchantia species, and they produce asexually by fragmentation, and they have what we call the game or gamecops. So they are basically the division of bryophytes that produce the gamecops. For is still a form of asexual reproduction, but during the sexual reproduction, the male and the female sex organs are produced either on different thalli, which is the plural form of thallus. This is basically the Marchantia life cycle. I normally prefer that students start from the place where the zygote is formed. That is the fusion of the sperm and the female to form a zygote. So once you can identify that particular place, this particular place where the zygote is formed, you understand that the zygote is going to develop into the sporophyte, and then the sporophyte has the foot, the seta, and then from the capsule, and meiosis is going to occur to form the spores. The spores will germinate into the male and female gametophytes, and then they are going to form the male gametophyte is going to form the anterodophores, and then the female gametophyte is going to form the archegonophore. They are going to produce their different gametes, which is the arteridia and the archegonium, that will later form the gametes that will fuse together to form the whole process all over again. So that's basically the life cycle of a bryophyte there. And so for the onwards, they are called onward because they look like horns. And what you want to remember here is that the gametophyte may be like a ribbon-like phallus, but when they change their phase into the sporophytic stage, it becomes a central rod-like tissue. Mimosas are the most advanced form of bryophyte. The first stage is the protonema stage, which is developed directly from a spore. It is a creeping green branch and frequently filamentous stage. And then after that, the second stage is a leafy stage, which develops from the secondary protonema. So it's basically spore, then the protonema, and then the gametophyte, and then the gametes, fusion, and then the production of a zygote, the sporophyte, the gametophyte is formed again, that is the spores from the gametophyte, and the cycle continues. So what you want to take note is that they can produce both vegetatively, which is by fragmentation and budding in their secondary protonema, and then for the sexual reproduction, it's just the normal zygote formation that I've mentioned earlier, and then their sporophyte consists of a food seta and capsule, and basically they disperse their spores after meiosis to different regions. And so we have examples like Funaria, Polytrichum, and Sphagnum. These are examples of mosses. Bryophytes are important for formation of peats, medicinal uses, in nursery and transportation. They are used as food for conserving the soil, and they have other or different types of ecological importance. So that's basically the end of my class. Please do subscribe to this channel, and God bless you.